Expedition X built its reputation going further than any other paranormal investigation show on television. Real locations, real fieldwork, real evidence, which makes what happened to their banned episode so significant, because this is not a show that manufactures drama. When an entire episode was pulled before a single viewer could watch it, it was not pulled for being too sensational. It was pulled for being too real. Subscribe and stay until the end, because what surfaces in this video is the footage they spent years making sure you would never see. To understand why the banned episode of Expedition X carries the weight that it does, it is necessary to first understand what separates this production from every other paranormal documentary series operating in the same television landscape. The paranormal genre has never been short of content. Cable television has spent decades producing an unbroken stream of ghost hunting programs, cryptid investigations, and property-based mystery series that follow broadly similar formulas: dramatic music, night vision cameras, investigators reacting to ambiguous sounds in the dark. Expedition X was built in deliberate opposition to that formula from the beginning. The show's foundational premise is that the phenomena worth investigating are not confined to allegedly haunted American properties accessible by a production van and a film permit. They exist in remote corners of the world where local populations have been reporting extraordinary experiences for generations, where the evidence has never been systematically examined because no outside institution has ever committed the resources to reach the location, and where the absence of a television-ready environment is precisely what makes the investigation credible. Phil Torres is the scientific anchor of that premise. His background as a field biologist and naturalist gives the show a methodological framework that most paranormal productions conspicuously lack. Torres approaches anomalous evidence the way a trained scientist approaches any data set, with a genuine commitment to eliminating conventional explanations before entertaining unconventional ones, and with the professional discipline to document findings accurately even when those findings resist the frameworks he brought to the investigation. That discipline is what makes his presence in the banned footage so significant. Jessica Chobot brings a different but complementary dimension to the production. Her investigative instincts are oriented toward the human side of the phenomena the show documents: the witnesses, the communities, the generations of reported experience that predate any outside investigation and that carry a weight of accumulated testimony that laboratory methodology alone cannot fully account for. Her ability to build trust with local sources in environments where outside investigators are typically regarded with suspicion has consistently produced testimony and access for Expedition X that other productions simply cannot replicate. Together, Torres and Chobot have taken the show into environments that range from the jungles of South America to the coastlines of the Pacific to the high-altitude regions of Central Asia, documenting phenomena that include unidentified aerial objects, cryptid encounters reported by credible witnesses across multiple generations, and physical locations where the documented history of anomalous activity stretches back further than any living person's memory. The show has earned a reputation within the paranormal research community and among the scientists and anthropologists who occasionally collaborate with the production for taking its subject matter seriously and for producing documentation that holds up to scrutiny. That reputation is the foundation on which the banned episode's significance rests. A production known for manufacturing drama banning an episode tells you nothing. A production known for rigorous fieldwork banning an episode tells you that the fieldwork produced something that the entire apparatus of professional television was not equipped to broadcast. The investigation that generated the banned footage did not originate through the standard development process that produces most Expedition X episodes. It did not come from a researcher identifying a promising location in the existing paranormal literature, or from a network development conversation about what regions or phenomena would perform well with the show's audience in a given season. It came from a source inside a research institution whose professional relationship with the production had generated reliable leads in the past, a source who made contact with the production outside of normal channels and under conditions of significant personal caution, indicating that what they were passing along was not information they were comfortable transmitting through any traceable pathway. What that source provided was a documented account of a location that had been the subject of classified institutional interest for a period spanning several decades. The nature of that interest, the identity of the institutions involved, and the specific findings that had accumulated across those decades of observation were not fully disclosed in the initial contact. What was disclosed was enough: a geographic location, a category of phenomenon, and a body of witness testimony from the local population of the region that was consistent across independent accounts separated by generations of time. The production team that evaluated the lead spent several weeks assessing its credibility before any commitment to pursue it was made. The geographic location checked out against independent sources. The witness testimony could be partially corroborated through existing anthropological records that predated any institutional interest in the site, and the category of phenomenon the source described was one that Expedition X had documented evidence of in adjacent regions during prior investigations, giving the production a legitimate methodological basis for treating the lead as worthy of serious field investigation. The internal discussions about whether to proceed carried a quality that production veterans on the show have described as unlike anything in their prior experience on the series. There was no shortage of enthusiasm for pursuing the investigation. The lead was compelling by any measure the production applied to it. The caution came from a different place. The source's manner of making contact, the institutional background they referenced, and the specific conditions they placed on how the information could be used all communicated something that experienced television producers are not accustomed to factoring into their decisions. They communicated genuine risk. The decision to proceed was made with that risk fully acknowledged. The team was assembled, the location was arranged, and the cameras were packed for an investigation that everyone involved understood from the outset was operating in territory that the show's prior fieldwork had not fully prepared them for. What none of them fully anticipated was how quickly, once they were on the ground at that location, the territory would make that clear on its own terms. Phil Torres has given hundreds of interviews across his career as a field scientist and television presenter. He is articulate, precise, and comfortable discussing the full range of phenomena Expedition X has documented, including the cases that most challenged his scientific framework. There is one investigation he does not discuss. When questions in interviews have approached the territory of the banned episode, through indirect references to a specific period in the show's production timeline, through questions about whether he has ever encountered something in the field that genuinely exceeded his scientific framework, rather than simply challenging it, Torres's responses shift in a way that is consistent and recognizable. He does not deflect with humor. He does not offer the standard paranormal television presenter's answer about keeping an open mind. He redirects with a deliberateness that reads less like media training and more like a decision made in advance about a specific subject that he has concluded cannot be addressed in a public forum. Jessica Chobot's public record around the same period shows a parallel pattern. A presenter who has always been willing to engage directly with the audience about her experiences in the field, including experiences that unsettled her, went notably quiet on the specifics of one production period in a way that her broader body of public communication does not otherwise exhibit. The indirect accounts that have surfaced about what both of them experienced during the investigation that produced the banned episode come from peripheral sources, crew members who were present but not in the forward position of the investigation, production staff who reviewed portions of the footage during the initial editorial process, and individuals within the research community who were briefed on the findings after the episode was pulled. Those accounts are consistent with each other in their broad outlines and consistent in the specific detail that both Torres and Chobot reached a point during the investigation where their professional frameworks, the scientific methodology Torres applies, and the witness-centered investigative approach Chobot brings, ceased to provide adequate structure for processing what they were experiencing in real time. That detail matters because it is the detail that distinguishes what happened during this investigation from the range of genuinely anomalous experiences both presenters have documented and discussed publicly across the full run of the show. Torres and Chobot have encountered things in the field that challenged them. They have documented phenomena that their respective frameworks could not fully account for, and they have said so on camera without apparent distress. What the banned episode documents is not a challenge to their frameworks. It is the moment their frameworks became irrelevant. The accounts of crew members who were in proximity to both presenters during the relevant sequence describe a quality of response in both Torres and Chobot that those crew members have struggled to articulate precisely. Not fear in the conventional sense, not confusion, but something closer to the sudden and complete recognition that the coordinates by which a person navigates reality have shifted in a way that cannot be shifted back. That is what they walked into, and the cameras caught all of it. The location where the banned episode was filmed has not been publicly identified by any party involved in the production or its suppression. What has been established through the research surrounding the footage's surfacing is a general geographic region and a documented history of institutional attention to that region that predates the expedition Expedition X investigation by several decades. The local population of the area has maintained a continuous oral tradition about the specific site that the production visited, a tradition that describes the location not as haunted in any conventional sense but as a place of permanent and active contact between the physical world and something that exists alongside it without being fully part of it. That description, in various culturally specific framings, appears in the recorded accounts of communities across the region and has been noted by anthropologists working in the area since the mid-20th century without being seriously investigated by any mainstream scientific institution. The institutional interest that the production source referenced was of a different character entirely. The documentation that has partially surfaced through the research surrounding the banned footage indicates that at least 2 separate government-affiliated research programs took an active interest in the site during the latter half of the 20th century. Neither program's findings have entered the public record in any meaningful form. What has surfaced is evidence of their presence, logistics records, communication fragments, and the accounts of local individuals who interacted with outside researchers during those periods, and whose descriptions of what those researchers were doing at the site are not consistent with any conventional scientific survey operation. The Expedition X production was not the first outside organization to send people to that location with the intention of documenting what was there. It was simply the first to bring cameras capable of capturing what those prior investigations had apparently encountered and chose not to put on record. The sequence of events that the banned episode documents begins approximately 40 minutes into the investigation footage, after a standard opening section that establishes the location, the environmental conditions, and the preliminary instrument readings the team recorded upon arriving at the site. Those preliminary readings were anomalous in ways consistent with the location's documented history, but not immediately extraordinary by the standards of what Expedition X had recorded in prior investigations. The electromagnetic variance was elevated. The acoustic environment of the site carried properties that Torres noted on camera were inconsistent with the physical characteristics of the surrounding geography. The instruments were performing the way instruments perform at active locations. Nothing in those first 40 minutes indicates what the following 11 minutes will contain. The transition point is not dramatic in the way television paranormal reveals typically are. There is no sudden spike in a meter, no obvious visual anomaly that the camera catches and the presenters react to. The transition is quieter than that and more disorienting because of it. The quality of the location itself changes. Something in the environmental character of the site shifts in a way that the camera documents in its effect on the people present before it documents any direct visual evidence of a cause. Torres stops mid-sentence during a technical observation about the instrument readings. The silence that follows is not the silence of someone collecting their thoughts. It is the silence of someone whose entire attentional system has been redirected by something that the analytical part of their mind has not yet caught up with. Chobot, positioned several meters away at a different point of the site, turns toward the same area of the location at the same moment without any verbal or visual cue from Torres. What both of them are orienting toward becomes visible on camera approximately 20 seconds after that simultaneous redirection. It is present at the site for the remainder of the 11-minute sequence. It does not behave in any manner consistent with any known phenomenon in the natural world, and it is aware of the cameras. The investigation was concluded without completing its planned scope. The decision to end the field day early was not made by the production team or communicated through the normal chain of on-site decision-making. It was a collective decision that all accounts describe as having been reached simultaneously and without discussion, the same quality of wordless collective understanding that has been described by other teams who have encountered phenomena at threshold locations around the world, and that the anthropological literature on such experiences has documented consistently enough to constitute a recognized pattern. The equipment was packed, and the team left the location within approximately 30 minutes of the relevant sequence ending. The drive back to the nearest populated area was conducted in a silence that crew members have described as different in character from the ordinary quiet of a tired production team at the end of a long field day. Back at the accommodation that night, Torres spent several hours writing detailed field notes that he has never shared publicly. Chobot did not participate in the standard end-of-day production debrief. 2 crew members requested to be rotated off the production for the remainder of the shoot, a request that was granted without the friction such requests typically generate. The physical effects documented in the days following the investigation included sleep disruption reported by multiple team members, episodes of disorientation in the field that persisted for several days after leaving the location, and in one documented case, a medical consultation for symptoms that the attending physician attributed to acute stress response without being able to identify a specific cause. Torres and Chobot returned to production on subsequent episodes and have continued working on the show. What they have never done is discuss that investigation in any public forum. The field notes Torres wrote that night have not surfaced. What has surfaced is the footage, and the footage makes the silence of everyone who was present entirely understandable. The official position of everyone connected to the production and broadcast chain is that the banned Expedition X episode does not exist. No network statement has been issued. No production company acknowledgement has been made. The total nature of that denial is the first indicator that the suppression decision did not originate entirely within the commercial television structure. Discovery Channel has pulled content before, for legal reasons, for sensitivity concerns, for scheduling conflicts that became permanent. In every prior case, the existence of the content was acknowledged even when its broadcast was not. The complete erasure of any official acknowledgement of this episode's existence indicates that the people managing the suppression understood that admitting the episode had been produced would immediately generate questions they were not prepared to answer. The speed of the suppression process suggests outside involvement. The timeline between the footage being reviewed at the executive level and the decision to pull and bury the episode is inconsistent with the operational rhythm of organizations that size moving on purely internal information. Something accelerated the process. The location's documented history of prior institutional interest provides the most direct explanation for what that something was. An organization that had been monitoring that site for decades, that had its own undisclosed findings from prior investigations, and that had a demonstrated interest in managing what entered the public record about that category of phenomenon would have both the awareness to know what the Expedition X footage contained and the capability to ensure it never broadcast. The episode was buried. The footage survived anyway. The copy of the banned episode that has surfaced was preserved by a single individual who was part of the production's post-production process and who made a deliberate decision at significant personal risk to retain a copy of the raw footage before the suppression order reached the stage of the pipeline they occupied. That individual held the footage for an extended period, not from indecision, but from a considered judgment that releasing it prematurely, before the broader conversation around UAP disclosure and anomalous phenomenon had reached a point where the footage could be received seriously rather than dismissed, would waste the only opportunity the footage would have to reach a meaningful audience. The timing of the release reflects that calculation. The footage has been examined by 2 independent digital forensics analysts whose findings confirm that it has not been altered, composited, or manipulated after the fact. The production metadata embedded in the file is consistent with the Expedition X production timeline. The camera unit identification data matches the equipment manifest for the relevant shoot. What has surfaced is the unedited raw output of a professional camera that kept rolling during 11 minutes of an investigation that changed everyone present. It is authentic, it is complete, and it is now in the world in a form that cannot be recalled. Every episode of Expedition X that has ever broadcast represents a fragment of a larger investigation that the show was never permitted to fully complete on camera. Every location Phil Torres and Jessica Chobot visited, every phenomenon they documented, every witness account they treated as worthy of serious examination, all of it exists within a context that the broadcast version of the show was never allowed to fully establish. The banned episode is that context. It is the answer that the entire catalog of the show's fieldwork was accumulating evidence toward without ever being permitted to reach on camera. Torres spent years applying scientific methodology to phenomena that consistently exceeded scientific methodology's explanatory range. Chobot spent years building trust with communities whose generational experience of the world's anomalous edges carries more evidential weight than any institutional research program has been willing to publicly acknowledge. The banned episode is where that accumulated fieldwork finally arrived at its destination. What the footage documents is not a challenge to the existing frameworks by which the modern world understands itself. It is evidence that those frameworks were always incomplete in a specific and consequential way. The phenomenon visible in that 11-minute sequence was not discovered by the Expedition X team. It was not created by the location, or by the investigation, or by the cameras that captured it. It was there before any of them arrived. It has been there for longer than the institutional programs that spent decades studying it have been keeping records. Phil Torres and Jessica Chobot went further than any other paranormal investigation show on television. The banned episode is what they found when they got there. It has been hidden for years. It has now surfaced, and what it shows has been waiting to be seen by enough people that it can no longer be buried. That moment is now.